FE is coupled with all your other stacks, right? So with NI, your TI, your SE, observation, your logic, right? And your intuition, by where you come into these circumstances, but then you're now able to reflect based on previous, experiences that then you can now recall. Johnny Fontana, Real World NF Scorpio, back with another video.
Skill is like, it's like a form of asceticism. It's learning a discipline. How do you have a conversation that's difficult? How do you give unflattering information to somebody without disrupting the relationship? How do you do it?
$1 million question.
Right. So have you ever thought about how to do it skillfully? This is something people do not know coming out of the womb. They have to learn it. Most leaders have not learned this particular skill, but many others. Let's take this one. Or you can take the route of, I'm never going to deliver unflattering information to anyone. I'll avoid. I'll be an avoider. If there's something unflattering to say, I won't say it. So I can keep the comfort. Anybody can keep comfort at the expense of honesty. Anybody can be a bull in a china shop and just bowl people over with honesty without any concern for the relationship. But how do you do both? How do you have a candid, open, honest relationship that preserves and even grows the connection?
So today we're going to talk about FE, extroverted feeling.
When you're first learning, just getting the ball to go where you want to is difficult. You have to practice and practice and practice and learn that, and it's very difficult. It feels awkward. You see people that are bad at soccer, and they look bad at soccer. They look uncoordinated, they look awkward. At a certain point, you get to the point where you can move the ball around, you can do the right things, but maybe you're focusing a lot on that. When you really have the skill down is when you have the skill down perfectly, and you don't have to look at the ball anymore. Right? You just know where the ball is. The ball is an extension of you. Maybe you have to check in every once in a while, but for the most part, you can get up and scan the field, and now your brain is free to think about tactics, to think about strategy, to think about planning ahead and what do you want to do next. And that's where you're going to get to those moments of genius. It's when the fundamentals have become so ingrained that your brain is freed up to think about the advanced things. And then the advanced things have become so ingrained that your brain is free to think about anything and everything, right? And the game comes to you, the game slows down, everything gets easier from there. But it all comes from the fundamentals. If you don't have your fundamentals down, if you can't do the basic moves without looking at the ball, you cannot look up at the field, you cannot think tactically, you cannot think strategically. So all those moments of genius you see, fundamentally, have to come from the fundamentals, and it's the same thing in game, right? If you're focused on how do I even know what to say, you're gonna have trouble building attraction.
FE is not only about reading rooms, because again, once you come into a room and you read the energies, right? That's the basics. Like, you read the room, you got it. What do you do with this now?
You said in the book that someone's 6 times more likely to make a deal with someone if they like that person.
Likable is a huge, you don't have to change your position.
Isn't that
and
crazy?
You get a lot more by being likable.
I mean, that's crazy. I mean, it's a crazy thing to know it's that much because we're emotional creatures, right?
Right.
That's why you're still in business, because you're teaching people how to tap into that, right?
Yeah.
We're an analytic society, we know the numbers work, but when
Right.
it comes to negotiations, that goes out the window.
Well, emotions come in the window.
Okay.
And how our brain reacts. And see, the other thing about being likable that's a strategic advantage is you're also up to 31% smarter in a positive frame of mind. What's that?
I'll be smarter because I'm in a better mood.
Will, if I smile at you,
Okay. So
I hit your mirror neurons. It's an involuntary response. There's a chemical change in your brain, and your brain capacity actually increases.
it just worked when you smiled at me. All right.
You see what I'm saying to you? And so now you have to understand that FE, especially for NI users, is so different than FE from someone who has other stacks. For example, someone asked a question on Reddit about, okay, so how do intuitives, intuit better or differently than ESTPs? I guess it was ESTP asking that question. And I responded, and my thing is this: anyone can NI, right? Anyone can NI, anyone can have FE, anyone can have it all. Like, we can all have it. What separates people are they're given DNA, they're given stacks, they're given abilities, right, in the first place, and secondly, their ability to hone these skills.
But some guys were asking, okay, so if I do this thing you've done at the end, I will basically get the same results. And I'm like, not exactly. Because I did one thing at the end that allowed me to reach mastery, but it allowed me this result because I had all the previous experiences before. You don't realize that there was this whole progression before, and what is working now for somebody like me or any person who reached that level today, it doesn't mean that just because you do the same thing, you will have the same results in the beginning, because you won't. When you actually reach this point of consistency of 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, maybe 1 year period, and you are consistent all along, when you reach that point, that final point where you are after 8 or 9 months, no matter what you do, listen carefully, no matter what you do, it is going to work. No matter what it is. Because you will have had all these experiences before. You will have had all the cues your mind, your unconscious mind will have noticed, and you will have adapt. You will have been adapting all along. So by the time you get to this 8 or 9 months consistency, or maybe more or less depending on people, whatever you do is going to work, no matter what it is.
Because just because you have these God-given gifts doesn't mean that you have the fortitude, okay, which is taught, which is instilled by others, that sort of the work ethic, okay, in order to hone and cultivate these skills. You have to have it. Just because you have these gifts doesn't mean that you're automatically going to cultivate and become great at it. You have to have the work ethic be behind it.
There's a lot of push towards being a workaholic, and hard work is a learned behavior. I see it in my team. There's people that come into I've seen it in the thousands of employees I've had, which is the closer they are to the sun, the harder they work. And I'm like, aha. And so I definitely feel like I learned hard work by watching my parents. I do believe, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, I don't, but I do believe that work ethic is a taught behavior. It's something you do have more control over. There's so many people that are talking shit about how big of an entrepreneur they're gonna be and how much they're gonna achieve, and they don't work on weekends. You know, I worked every Saturday of my 20s. And I talk to 20-year-old entrepreneurs every single day. Lately, I've been saying to them, this Saturday, you're gonna have more time off than I've had in my entire 20s on a Saturday. So before you tell me how you're gonna be bigger than me, start thinking about what you're actually doing.
Right.
And number three, you have to have the opportunities in order to now use these, because you can be working on your basketball skills all day, but if you're not playing with others, if you're not being able to not only play in your court and have advantage, but go to other places, go deal with other cultures, other people of different skill levels, of different heights, of different, what have you, you'll only see it from this point of view, right? You see what I'm saying to you? So it's the same thing with FE. You walk into a room, dude, right? Just because you read energies doesn't mean anything, right? You need to be able to apply these in multiple ways. And let me explain to you. I'm gonna take you back to where I was unhealthy, right? My FE. And I think I need to do that just to give you perspective, because a lot of people, they feel that, oh man, you're so tough. You were a Marine, you were a cop, you all your FE and your empathy is gone. No, not really, right? When I first came back from the military, this is really quickly. When I first came back from the military, I was sort of estranged from my siblings, right? And it was one night where they came to visit. I was in South Florida, Miami, and they came to visit with their friends, because my father at the time had a yacht club, and they came and they were staying there, and I was so overwhelmed with the alcohol that I was like, dude, guys, I feel so nice to be with you, because I haven't been with my brothers and siblings for such a long time, and I felt like this sort of disconnect. And I was just like, I can't believe it. You know, we're here together. And I was crying, but they weren't responding, right? They weren't responding. And I wasn't able to read the situation and that, dude, like, this is not the right time. Number one, this is not the right time. Number two, they're not feeling you like you are feeling the situation. Okay? Like you wanting something, but they're preoccupied with their own space because again, you're in a different space because you're a little older, they're younger, they just came to Miami just to have a good time and party. They're not there to be emotional and you know, deal with family issues. And that's not where they were in their lives. They didn't have kids. They were carefree, so they weren't they weren't in that space in their life. But I was. I had just gotten married. I purchased a home, and I was lonely, you know, because I didn't have my siblings around me. I had just come back from the military, like I said, so I was in a weird space, and I just sort of it had all built up, and I was just like, and there were other cases where like I would say certain things to different people, or if I would see something, I would comment on it, not realizing that, dude, like you're saying things and people are not receptive of it because you're digging and you're, and that's to the point why I heard that my father had told my stepmother, who then in turn told my wife, that he didn't like hanging around me because I was too intense. I would always ask questions. I was always trying to figure him out, and he didn't like that. And I was always poking, right, asking questions, analytical, being deep, which no one else did, but I did. But I was the unhealthy version of me, not because I was in a weird space. I was just in a different space, right? I was, you know, sort of coming back, you know, from being away. It was a transitional period, but it wasn't necessarily that I was, you know, in a bad space. It's just I didn't know. I didn't know how to read energies. I didn't know how to read situations. I was just like whatever. So that was the unhealthy part of me. But now, okay, again, having all these experiences, I've developed that level of FE where not only that I can read situations, I can sort of protect myself. I can, you know, when people approach me, right, they don't know how I'm feeling because I don't necessarily give off that, you know, vibe. I have a lot of folks who they're going through some great days, you feel it. When they go through some bad days, it's like you can feel it. For me, I'm very neutral. I remain neutral because I don't want to disturb the energy in the room. When I feel people, when I see people, I know, okay, this person doesn't like being asked how you doing. This person doesn't want to be bothered, but I feel it. And it's in me. I'm like, dude, like, I want to ask. I want to figure out why. And I want to help that person. But you learn not to. And you also learn that being too helpful, you know, providing too much assistance is actually more harm to yourself than others, because then you start taking on all these, you know, issues themselves, and then your immune system weakens and all that stuff. I mean, it can really be bad. And that's why when I think I'll make another video on it in terms of how FE can make you sick. We'll save that for another video. But let's talk about in terms of like being able to use FE, right?
So, the overfunctioner, I'm sort of grew up in this. I'm an oldest of 5, and I grew up doing, you know, being the go-to person, taking care of everybody. And I reached a point in my life where I had to say to myself, you know what? The people around me are getting weaker and weaker as I'm taking all this responsibility, and I'm getting more stressed. I'm getting stressed, and they're becoming more helpless. Why don't they change? That's what I'm saying. But they have no incentive to change. They have a great life. I have to be the one to say, you know, I don't think this one's on me. Or when someone comes to me with a problem, instead of saying, what can I do to help you? I might say, what do you think you can do about this? Now that sounds like, in a system like this, uncaring leadership. What I'm telling you is it might be the smartest thing you could say to somebody to help them grow.
FE, I'll give you an example of what FE is in real world, right? Beyond just reading energies and so forth and so on. It's being able to hold multiple concepts in your minds. But again, FE is coupled with all your other stacks, right? So with NI, your TI, your SE, observation, your logic, right? And your intuition by where you come into these circumstances, but then you're now able to reflect based on previous, experiences that then you can now recall.
Okay, interesting. Talk to me about silence and the use of silence. You just use it there on me.
Right.
But sometimes it's not the right thing to do because people, they react differently to silence, right?
Well, yeah, we got to watch how we react to silence. There's some relationship-oriented people, they signal anger by giving somebody the silent treatment. So they will misinterpret silence. And they will say silence, the other side's mad, they're upset, I got to talk. When in fact, the other side might be trying to think. So silence is a dynamic, in order for it to be effective, hence the term effective pause, you got to read the other side in the moment. And so I'll shut up, and you're gonna give me massive amounts of information as to how you're reacting. I'm either gonna see a contemplative look on your face, I'm gonna see a go on look on your face, or there's some people that are really good at holding their face but can't hold their hands. And we see that highly analytical people will keep a complete stone face, and their hands or their feet will start to move.
Okay. What's the biggest tell for men?
Tell is context.
Okay.
And that's why I need to talk to you long enough to know the context. And what am I talking about there? What I'm really looking for is the way a polygraph works is it's not trying to pick up your tells, it's trying to establish your baseline. What do you look like when you're telling the truth? You're going to lie 15 ways. You're going to tell the truth one way. So my small talk is really designed to get your baseline on what you look like when you're telling the truth. What'd you have for breakfast today? What was your commute like in today? How many kids have you got? The stuff that the polygrapher asks you a bunch of baseline questions.
So, I was watching a YouTube video. Maybe I may put the clip up, right? Of an officer telling another black individual, that he needs to get back to his vehicle because I guess it was a traffic stop and that individual was being belligerent and refused to go back into his vehicle. And so, long story short, the officer pulled out his weapon, placed the barrel of the weapon in front of the individual and told him, get back in the effing vehicle.
Video this. He put his gun on my head. You're right. He put his gun on my head. Hey, Slim, get back in the car. Get back in the car now. I'm not going to tell you again. Get back in the car. Get back in the car. Get back in the car. Slim, go ahead. I dare you to fucking fight me, son. Get back in the car. Get back in the car.
Now, you have two opposing views. You have individuals on this side saying, oh, that officer needs to live under the jail for doing that. He was too aggressive. That's excessive, force and so forth and so on. And you have this group of people that are saying, oh, that person is so ignorant. He should have listened to the officer. What is he doing? What's wrong with him? And for me, that FE now, using the logic, using the NI, using the SE, where does the SC comes from, right? The observation of like when I was a kid, when I saw officers living in New York City, what was the first thing you did when you saw officers come and you're outside playing, especially when you're like in the inner cities, whatever? You run, right? It was just a thing. So you're able to understand it, you're able to recall that. But now, bringing in that logic and that FE, right? You ask yourself, because I came in and I asked a question and people didn't understand my question. And if you're high context, I won't have to say it. I won't have to verbalize it. I won't have to give you the details. You should already know where I'm going with it. So I'll paint it again, all right? You have one side saying that officer needs to live under the jail. He was using excessive force. How dare he? This side of the group, that individual is an ignorant individual. He's an ignorant MF. What was he thinking? The officer told him to get back in his vehicle. Anybody in their right mind would have actually went back to their vehicle. And comes me. I look there. And I say, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But there's another aspect. Because of me. I've been in these situations. I come from that place. I police those people. I've been around those kind of officers. I've been in the hood policing. I've befriended those individuals. So where do you think I'm going with this? Let me get a little closer. What do you have now? When you have an individual being belligerent while there's a gun pointing at his head. He's staring down the barrel. Any false movement, okay? The officer can pull that trigger and it's over. You see what I'm saying to you? The question you ask is, what has that individual been exposed to his entire life that he's willing to die? Ask yourself that question. What exposures has he encountered living in those neighborhoods? Same goes for the officer. In and out, dealing with crime, dealing with thugs, dealing with bad guys, dealing with all kind of horrendous and heinous acts of violence with no room, no psychological debrief to say, hey, let me go ahead and remove you from the situation, because if you do, guess what? You have to hand over your weapon, your gun and your badge, and you go on, leave until you can get settled, because we don't want officers with mental health issues on the road.
So, another reason that I quit being a therapist is I had very little collegial support. I kind of mentioned this already, but basically, I was not well supported at all. Yeah, I did supervision. I did years and years of supervision as a psychotherapist, but that wasn't supportive. Mostly it was really good training to learn how to play the game, to learn how to say, if I tell the supervisor this, they're going to punish me or punish my clients or harm me or harm my clients in this, and this way. So I had to learn what I could share and what I couldn't share. And that was a very unpleasant, frustrating process. It was disgusting, basically. Don't say trigger things. Like, if you tell people you're suicidal, maybe you don't really want to follow through to kill yourself, but even if you start talking about suicidality, a lot of therapists and psychiatrists, they're trigger happy. They'll send someone right to the hospital. Well, I learned the same thing from my supervisors. If I was really open with them, like I was supposed to be, like I was trained to be, about what was going on with my clients, they were less supportive of me, less supportive of my clients. They wanted to just do to my clients what they did to their own clients, which was send them to the hospital, force them to get on medication evaluations, kick them out of clinics, say, you need a higher standard of care, basically be incredibly untherapeutic. And so what I learned is that I couldn't talk openly with my colleagues about what was going on. I could be friendly with my colleagues. It was always a good idea, especially when I was working at clinics, to get along with them. And even with the little bit that I did tell my colleagues, a lot of them figured out, oh, this guy actually can work with really troubled people. And they didn't want to work with really troubled people. Most people wanted to get rid of the really troubled people, so they would send them to me. So yeah, I had good relationships with colleagues, but I was very unsupported. The end result with that was that professionally, I was very isolated.
Okay. So what has that officer been exposed to himself that he's just able to just leisurely take that weapon and point it down a person's face? And what do you do when you have now this person and this type of officer coming together, what do you have? You see what I'm saying to you? So FE is not just being able to read energies. FE is not just being able to just say, oh yeah, I feel what you're feeling. I'm comfort you. It's being able to have these tough conversations. Being able to say, yeah, that officer was an idiot. That individual, yeah, you were an idiot. But I also know what you've gone through. I also know what it feels like. And you tell that officer, dude, I know what it feels like. Because you've been jaded. You've been conditioned. You've been living in this hole, this dirty hole, day in and day out. No relief. And you've been conditioned. Your mind is rewired. Your mind is corrupt. Right? So when you have two corrupt minds together, what happens? When you talk about training, it's nothing to do with training. It's beyond training. That's what FE is. Being able to read situations, understand, have these tough conversations, right? But be logical about it. Have empathy. Make sense of it. That's what FE is all about. That's the higher level of FE. Basics is, sorry, you'll find basics everywhere. But being able to walk into a room and say, dude, I get it. On both ends, where you have these individuals fighting each other, not even wanting to hear and listen to one another, not even worried about the mental state of these individuals that actually propel them to, on both ends, conduct themselves in that manner. But no one talks about it. And that's why we are INFJs.